will start on this end. You will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and at the end, you will have a 1-minute closing. The press will start with questions first, and when they are finished, then we will take the questions from the audience. Audience, if you have questions, if you'll just bring them up over here, and all will grab them, or all grab them. Press, go for it. Oh, excuse me, yes, 2-minute openings first, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
First, I want to say thank you to the Cherokee County Republican Women for hosting this event tonight. My name is John Barge, and I previously served as state superintendent from 2010 to 2014. I'm running again because I'm passionate about education, specifically public education. After all, it is where over 90% of our 1.8 million children are educated in this state. I'm passionate about education because I personally experienced the power of education to level the playing field. See, I grew up poor in an alcoholic home with an abusive father. I know what it's like to eat free lunch. I know what it's like to, as we say, sleep with one eye open. But those experiences taught me the value of education, and that education would give me the opportunity to succeed. So with my public education, I obtained my bachelor's degree from Berry College in Rome, my master's and specialist degrees from West Georgia, and my doctorate in educational leadership from the University of Georgia. I seek to return to this position because I see how far we have fallen. I'm currently a local superintendent, and I look and I see back when I was state superintendent previously, we were ranked overall quality of education 7th in the nation by Ed Week. The 2018 report was just released. We are now 33rd in the nation. The challenges facing our school system are real, and they require real experience to handle. I'm the only candidate in this race who has experience as a local superintendent and a district superintendent. I'm the only candidate in this race that can say I've moved the needle for this state. When I took office, we were 13th in the nation. When I left, we were 7th. I would be honored with the opportunity to lead this state again out of the woods where we find ourselves currently, back to a place of national prominence. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Richard Woods. I'm your current state school superintendent. I wish to say thank you to the Cherokee women again for allowing us to have this forum tonight. 4 years ago when I ran with a promise to you, the people of Georgia. A promise that, that I looked at and said we're going to move education away from the test and back to our children. And we're going to make sure that they have opportunities, for life. And I'm proud to say that we have done that. We have done that by removing regulation. We have done that by focusing on the basics and providing our kids with opportunity. The removing of regulation, we have seen the largest reduction in our state's history of mandated testing. Also, we have stopped the spread of Common Core within our state. Again, the pledge that I have made to you. As we look at the basic education, again, growing up in a military family, I understand the value of reading. Again, a mother who made sure that I had books all the time. We have committed throughout the state to make sure that all of our kids read. We actually have a statewide literacy plan. We've just received $61 million in which, we will be able to put that money into reading as well. And again, we will look at making further corrections with math, throughout the state. But also expanding opportunities. One thing I do understand is that, life is more than everyone attending a 4-year university. And that's something as an individual who attended the VOTEC school that understands the value of education, but also providing our kids opportunities with personal finance and fine arts and STEM and STEAM education, giving them a hope for the future. This is what we're about. Again, as I shared that I came to you 4 years ago with a promise, I have kept that promise. And again, I thank you for this opportunity tonight.
This question is for both of you. If elected or re-elected to your position, what would be your first priority as state superintendent?
Okay. Well, for me, again, having currently being a local superintendent, I know I've experienced what's happening at the department from a different perspective. And I know what needs to change. I know how the department can be organized differently to be more effective and more efficient at work to help local school districts. Quite frankly, there's been a 70% turnover in senior staff since I left office. There is not a lot of consistency in what's happening at the department. There's very little reliability that local school districts can place on what's happening at the department. Just for an example, we spent nearly a year working on a comprehensive needs assessment that we were told was mandatory. I have one person on my staff who does all federal programs, Title I, Title II, Title III, ESOL, Title VI, special. One person that does that plus curriculum. And so to pull this person off, to go through a webinar every Friday for 15 weeks, and then work on this, and after we submit it, be told, oh, it's optional, you're not going to have to do that. Those are the kinds of things that we need consistency in what's going on. We need consistency in the folks that we're working with, and we need better communication. We're not getting the communication that we need as local school districts.
I think that, we're looking at continuing the positive movement we're seeing across the state. One of the things we look at, we have the highest graduation rate that we've ever had. So again, why move back? And again, I anticipate by 2020 we'll meet or exceed the national average. We're seeing growth in SAT, ACT scores across the state, even milestones. But also, one of the things we've looked at, we're giving our kids choice we did not have prior to taking office. 23 years, we did not even have an individual who even dealt with fine arts at the Department of Education. We do so now. We've expanded opportunities building upon, the pathways with our career tech. We actually have an economic development liaison embedded within the department to reach out and work with business to expand opportunities for our children. We continue to see growth in areas for our children. We have over 20,000 internships this past year, 35,000, opportunities for our children to have industry credentials. We have a personal finance course that now can be offered to each and every child in the state of Georgia. These are options we continue to grow. Within the turnover within the office, you'll find that turnover happens within this office quite a bit, work with the department. But I would say this, I'm very proud of the team that we have assembled. We have individuals such as an individual that's over reading, our reading and literacy, who is nationally recognized for her work. We have an individual who focuses on school improvement, who has actually done the job. And so as we continue, we do not need to turn back to the days in which it was focused on, putting in place a common core. Something, again, I fought and opposed. Education is moving forward. Our kids are able to experience things throughout the state. And so that is what my pledge is to make sure that the momentum stays. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here this evening. We appreciate your time. Rich, I'll start this with you. This is for both of you candidates. You brought up Common Core a moment ago, and basically whatever you call it today or whatever its messages happen to be today, can you say specifically how you believe Common Core still influences education here in Cherokee County?
In two areas. Actually, the Common Core standards still reside within math. They also reside within English language arts. We have had basically a name change adopted by the state board. But if you look at the standards themselves, compare them to New York or some other state, you'll find them virtually the same. So again, in those two areas, we actually have, those residual effects within Cherokee County or throughout the state. But one of the things I looked at is when we came on board, we actually adopted other standards. We've adopted science, we've adopted social studies since taking office, and also PE standards. We could have chosen Common Core nationally adopted standards, but we did not. They are standards that were basically vetted and created by Georgia teachers. They are Georgia-owned and Georgia-grown. Within the next few years, we'll see a readoption of math and English language arts. That will be a time in which I will have the ability to make the adjustments and invite our teachers into the process so so that we can make sure that we have the standards that basically best fit us as a state. And so that's where we stand right now within Georgia as far as Common Core standards themselves. If I had to, take a step further, again, I'm an individual who believes in state rights. I believe that, the Federal Department of Education should not exist, but that we should have the money that they have, and I guarantee you we can better use it with flexibility within our state. So that's where I stand on the Common Core and early education nationally as well.
Same question.
Okay. So we have Common Core still in this state in English and math, and quite honestly, English and math were the only two content areas that Common Core standards were developed in. So stopping the spread of Common Core is a misnomer. There is no spread because there were no common standards developed in science and social studies. Now, there were a group of states who got together and developed the next generation science standards, but we made that decision when I was state superintendent that we weren't going that direction. So there has been no stopping of the spread of Common Core, and the Common Core is still here. Now, we need to look at the progress that our folks are making. The NAEP scores were just released. We saw significant growth in mathematics. Now, I will tell you, the Common Core standards are not perfect. They are not perfect by any stretch of imagination, and we need to do some things differently in mathematics. We need to spend more time in the early years with very fundamental basics: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We need to teach kids how to count back change. That is a very common practice that teaches kids math. But it's very hard to get to those things sometimes when you've got everything else going on and all the other expectations, and you've got the emphasis on assessment, you've got the emphasis on the Georgia milestones is coming, you've got to show growth. And so it's a difficult thing for teachers to do sometimes, to venture out and to spend the time that they need to spend on the basics. So in reviewing standards, that's what we need to do. And as far as how it impacts Cherokee County, we actually have the flexibility to go 15% above and beyond the Common Core. So there are things that we can do, and there are things that I'm sure Cherokee does do that are above and beyond.
Mr. Barge just mentioned testing a minute ago, and Georgia's Every Student Succeeds Act plan was approved earlier this year. And Superintendent Woods mentioned this is sort of moving away from the high stakes testing that is going on.
Yes, here it is.
My question, I'll just summarize it as this. What should testing look like in Georgia? And we'll start with Superintendent Woods.
Well, I'm glad to say we've led the way as far as testing is concerned. One of the things we did, we definitely peeled back the requirement of excessive testing. Again, as we mentioned, we have seen the largest reduction of state mandated testing in the state's history. Again, this is something that I inherited as far as the testing model. One of the things that I've always been very proactive is looking at a very formative type assessment model, one in which we can actually measure what goes on during the year instead of the autopsy model, which we've had for many years. I mean, whether you look at the milestones of the CRCP or the Iowa, all these have been basically models. And I think that we actually have created a task force to deal with this, to look at the opportunities, which we invited all districts to participate. Again, what should testing look like? So we're actually listening to the people of Georgia. There may be some other options we continue to look at, or some of this deals with the feds. But this upcoming year, we'll actually have something called Team Bill, which is a game-based assessment, grades 1 and 2, which again is very formative in nature. So I think that as we look and work with the feds, work with our districts, within the next few years, we hope to see a system that really measures growth and the ability to make corrections during the school year instead of waiting to the end of the year. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Very pleased to see the progress, but also very pleased to see the reduction of the number of tests and also some of the redundancy that was out there, which did not take place until we stepped in office.
Well, I think that we missed a tremendous opportunity with our ESSA plan. We didn't go far enough in our creativity and our request. We had an opportunity to be flexible with the feds. When we said that U.S. Department of Education requires testing, high-stakes testing for our state accountability systems. So we had the opportunity then to put in place a formative assessment model and to request a formative assessment model, but we failed to request that. More than just eliminating testing, I think we need to do testing differently, and I think we agree on the formative assessment piece. But I can tell you from, my time in office, we eliminated the Georgia High School graduation test. The Georgia High School graduation test kept thousands and thousands of kids in this state from earning a high school diploma, which kept them from entering post-secondary education, which kept them from being employed. It was an economic development issue. So when you eliminate English, math, science, social studies, and 3 grade levels of the writing assessment, we made some progress there. However, what we also saw is when we did not test science and social studies, we saw students getting to high school who were not being taught the foundations in science and social studies that they needed because it wasn't tested. There is some truth to what gets tested gets taught. And so students were failing the Georgia High School graduation test miserably in science and social studies because they weren't getting the foundations they needed at the early grade levels. Just stopping those tests is not the answer. Designing a different test that allows teachers to monitor student progress throughout the course of the year, as has been mentioned already, is the best solution. So that at the end of the year, you have an assessment for students. You have a grade. You have an idea of where students are.
Let me start this question with you. I think we would all agree in this room that teaching our students what they need to know is the bottom line for everybody. Nobody disagrees with that. But on the federal, state, and local level, at the end of the day, it does come down to money and to revenue. And I'd like to ask both of you, is it time that we revisit the way that local systems acquire and are able to keep their revenue? Or do we continue for counties such as Cherokee to help subsidize, if you will, other school systems throughout the state?
I think it is time to revisit that formula. I think QBE is a very solid formula in that it tries to accommodate for the differences that it costs more money to educate some children than others. It takes more money to educate the special needs child than the child that doesn't have special needs, that kind of thing. So it tries to account for that. The problem is, this is the first year in 18 years that we haven't had an austerity reduction. So we're just now, as a state, getting back to the level of funding education in our state, the same level we were funding it 18 years ago. So I'm grateful for that. And as a local superintendent, trust me, I'm grateful to have that austerity reduction in return. However, I'm in a very small rural district. And that's giving me a much different perspective now in looking at this funding formula. So we have the complete opposite problem that you guys have. We're not getting any equalization funding that comes from QBE, which is some of the tax dollars that go from wealthier districts to poor districts. Because that formula considers our county one of the 25 wealthiest counties in the state. Well, there's a problem with that. We have a lot of land on the water, which is why we're considered wealthy. But over a third of our county is owned by state and federal government. So that means we have no possible way of receiving any tax revenue from this property. We can't develop it, we can't put businesses on it, we get no tax revenue from it. So while we're wealthy, 100% of our kids are free to use lunch. So we get no equalization from the state, while there are other districts that get millions up here in Metro Atlanta. So there's something awry with that formula that could be better done for both Cherokee and, let's say, McIntosh County.
Again, the current funding formula, again, developed in 1985, a lot has changed since 1985. And definitely it needs to be looked at. I know various governors and General Assemblies have made that attempt, but to no avail so far. Going to the point about equalization, definitely I think in being superintendent and traveling throughout the state, there are places in southwest Georgia, to be honest, the only thing they have is pulpwood and farming. They are very low income, and they are some of the most impoverished places in the state. And I think having, some type of equalization, definitely supports that, because they would not have, I'll be honest, they would not have unless somehow we get some support throughout the state. Now, again, looking at that, is that, looking at various forms of different, revenue enhancement, then perhaps that is. Maybe we can look at what we do across the state and not just say, just one section as far as, taxes and how that's, acquired throughout the state. That's an option. I think that, we have to come to the realization, that every ounce and inch of the state benefits from a strong education system. And that's just the fact. I mean, we don't want to leave any part of Georgia behind. I think we are doing some things looking at rural development that will definitely help that. And there may be some things we can look at even internally. And I think, we should begin first by looking at our state budget. Are we actually doing what we, are we going above and beyond what we need to do constitutionally? I think that's where we started. That's where we started within our own department and looking at, bringing in some audits to make sure that we are good stewards of the money. So yes, I think there has to be some things looked at, and definitely the QB form that needs to be updated, because it does not take into consideration things in transportation.
If my colleague will forgive me, this will be a yes or no. I'm not supposed to ask follow-up questions. But can we get a commitment from both of you that if elected, that will be an area that you will work to at least take a look at on a very serious basis?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, this is my last question, and then for both of you, and that is, do you support school choice, and what does school choice mean?
Well, again, as far as school choice, do I support it? Yes, as far as looking at, what it means to me, homeschool. I support homeschool. I actually, supervise that. I think it's very important. Private school, I, definitely support, individuals who want to send their children to the private school and even, have our charter options. But, constitutionally, when we look at it, my primary focus has to be on the K-12 public education system. That is what we're about. Again, almost 1.8 million children attend our schools throughout the state. It's extremely important that we make sure that we have funding with that. And I would look at that funding has to come, primarily. I mean, that's what the state school superintendent is about. So, we'll continue to make sure that happens. And again, I appreciate those that are parents. I would never want to interfere with the parents' right to choose. I think it definitely is their within their right, and where they send their children is great. But my job is to make sure that public education, is the place that people want to send their child. And to do so, I think, we have to make sure that we have adequate funding that is there.
All right, so again, the whole choice question it's a pretty loaded question because choice means different things to different people. So when it comes to, let's say, charter schools, I'm a proponent of what charter schools originally were designed for. Charter schools were originally designed to give local school districts the flexibility to address problems in their community in creative ways. In exchange, and to do that, they were given waivers from some very onerous state rules in order to do what they wanted to do to address the problem. That's a locally grown charter. But what charter became over time and has become is this lightning rod issue of for-profit or not-for-profit. If we could get back to, look, the whole idea of the charter is for a school district to enter into a contract with the state to waive some things and to do some things differently to address problems. That's good. I wrote the charter planning grant for the Floyd College and Career Academy years ago. One of the first career academies in the state. I wrote that planning grant, so I'm going to leave it at that. What I don't support, unless you level the playing field, is a voucher program. Okay? So giving any taxpayer money to a private school that does not have the same level of accountability as a public school is wrong. Because you're not being transparent with those funds. I promise you, our public schools, the public schools in Cherokee County, if the private schools were given the same accountability and were required to accept the same students as the public school, Cherokee County schools would compete with any private school here, I promise you.
Gentlemen, this will be my final question. We were talking some weeks ago on the local level for the school district races. Obviously, the school safety issue was paramount. A lot of questions, a lot of concerns there. How do we reach the point where the state of Georgia needs to assist local school systems financially and perhaps with other resources as it pertains specifically to school safety? And Richard, we can start with you.
Well, we've already started the process. Again, with the General Assembly, we have seen some funds that have been given to school safety. And to be honest, that needs to come first and foremost. Our children have to go into a school in which they feel safe. One of the areas in which we can do so is looking at facility plans that actually come through the State Department. And so I think looking at ways in which we can make sure that the schools are physically safe. Our greatest challenge is some of the older buildings. They're not built for a day and time in which we look at safety in the way which we do today. So I think looking at upgrades is definitely something we have to look at. But also going above the numbers, I think one of the things we've looked at is trying to make sure that, or at least an option for some, to establish a school precinct or a police precinct within a school. Basically, you're just giving up a building or a room for officers, and that would be something that would be very low maintenance and again very low cost at all. So I think trying to come up with different options that are out there. Also looking at this as a national thing, it should be something we should have a talk with our congressional legislation, because this is something that I think the federal government can and should offer support. So it is something, yes, I think funding has to look at it, has to be a priority, and I think that comes from both state and federal resources, but also coming up with ways in which we can mitigate this as much as we can. And I think we do that by supporting our counselors, again, giving our teachers the ability to have a relationship with their children so that they can actually have conversations, and perhaps we can head these things off prior to them even taking place.
I do think that it's time that we address safety and security. I think that there is a place for the state. In fact, the state has made money available to local school districts. Our problem at this point is all that we've been told is that it will be made available to us through competitive grant process, but we have no idea how to apply for that. I've got some ideas of what I would use that money for securing our schools, because it really, I'm looking right now at our video surveillance systems in our middle and high school. They are so old, and the DVRs that they record to are so dated, we can't, they're really not very useful, to be honest with you. So to replace those is about $100,000. Well, my eSPOS in my county only generates $100,000 a month, and that eSPOS is covered, is spent for the next 19 years paying for new school. So yeah, it's time to look at that. There are schools, districts in this state that don't have the resources that others have. But we're also not going to wait. We're not going to wait on the state to fix it. We can't afford to wait. We are looking at, it's on my website, it's on the push card downstairs, we're looking at the creation of the school marshal program. I can't afford a school resource officer in every school. I have two, but I need more. So we're looking at tapping into our own community using retired military or retired police who are already trained in the proper use of weapons, who are vetted, who are cleared to work around our students just like every other employee, They clear a criminal background check. So that they can volunteer. They want to be a part. They want to make sure that their children, their grandchildren are safe. And we can do that. And I'm working with our own law enforcement folks in our community now to do that. The other thing that we must look at is mental health. Many of the problems in our schools, the behavior are symptoms of a bigger problem, which is poor mental health. Every year that I've been in McIntosh County, we have a mental health counselor in every one of our schools to address those problems.
That was all my questions, so thank you.
I have an hour's worth of questions and answers here. So don't feel you have to use your full 2 minutes.
Okay.
Your first question is, what are your thoughts on arming teachers with firearms?
I don't think that we should require that at all. I think I'm okay with it being an option. I will tell you, having been a high school principal, there are times that I would have felt better having a firearm in my desk and a lockbox. Knowing what happened in Parkland, if somebody came into my school to threaten my kids, I would be there. And I would want to be equipped to be able to address that. Because I take our kids very seriously and their safety. But I also know that, as a principal, that I've had numbers of teachers on medication. And I knew when they hadn't had their medication. And I wouldn't want those teachers having guns. We just had a teacher up in North Georgia that had a gun go off in his classroom. An empty classroom, but he wasn't supposed to have it. So those kinds of things can happen. Am I opposed to it? No. But I think that the process needs to be very, very strict on who has them. And in fact, our state law already allows that. We had state law, the weapon carry bill passed last year that already allows that. It's a local school district decision, a local school board decision whether to allow teachers to carry guns. So they have to be highly trained. They have to go through the same training as law enforcement officers. So I think it is potentially a good thing.
Again, I firmly believe this should be a local decision. It's not something I would ever mandate from the state level. It is something that you know your communities better. You know what your schools, what your district, what you find tolerable and not tolerable. If any school district went down that route, I would definitely want to make sure that they received optimal training. It is not something you take very lightly as far as just giving someone a gun. Again, coming from South Georgia, being raised around guns for really my entire life, it is something that has to be respected. But I think that also it's just not just giving our teachers a gun, but as I go back, the best thing we can do with our teachers is give them time to build a relationship. That is something that we have missed for many, many years because we've been focused on the test. And I think by allowing our teachers to get to know our children, then perhaps they would feel very safe in letting people know, about something that may go down. I think one of the things I heard from Parkland was that a young man texted some of his friends inside the building. Well, if they had the relationship, perhaps we could have secured the building a little bit better. But it is something I think, again, for myself, Sherry, if it meant protecting my staff and children, yes, I would not hesitate. But it's not something you typically like. Even as a high school teacher, I think about if I had a gun on my side, and there were times I had to break up a fight. So that perhaps would not be the best time to have a gun on my side. So it has to be really well thought out, and again, something you have to take into consideration on a lot of different aspects.
Second question, discuss the state of career technology options for students.
I think career tech has definitely gone, has exploded throughout the way. We're seeing a lot of great growth in career tech. I'm pleased to say that, for years we said that every child, basically had to go to a four-year university. That definitely is not, the reality of life. In fact, this past Christmas, I had to call somebody to replace my heat pump. I didn't call my college professor on that. But I did call, an individual that, made a lot of money. We continue to see a lot of great growth in our career pathways. And one of the ways we're doing that, we're actually talking to business and industry. We're finding out, what they need and how we can best serve them. And we are reaching out to local districts to say, is there a pathway that we can help you create to ensure that, you at the local level can, meet your economic needs. We're doing that with Pinewood Studios. We've been able to do that with Cyber Command, with Frito-Lay and Houston County, Elbert County, you have the mining industry. And so we're talking with business and industry to listen to them. And so we continue to look at that, but I would, say this, we want to increase our ability to give internships, again, where students can actually go on the job. And we've actually seen a great growth in that with roughly 20,000 young people experiencing, internships. But we don't want to swing to the extreme again. Yes, we want people in career tech. We want them to go to four-year university. We want them to go to the military. We want them to start their own job. So that's our commitment.
Same question? All right. When I was state superintendent, the Career Pathways Initiative was, it was our idea. During my time as state superintendent, we developed over 100 career pathways in the state of Georgia. Developed over 200 courses. I've been the state director of career technical education. I've been a local director of career technical education. The whole idea of the pathway is every child is going to have a job. Those of you that have parents, I have a daughter who's a senior in college. Trust me, I want her to have a job at some point in her life. We can do a better job preparing those children to be ready to step into those jobs, even if it's going to college. Be ready. Take the right courses. That's the whole idea of the pathway. It's not locking kids into anything. It's exposing them to what's out there so that they have an idea of what they want to do, so they don't spend 6 years in college and over $100,000 in money trying to find themselves. But it was also designed, the pathways were designed to be flexible. So the local communities could develop their own pathways. I'll give you a prime example. We're on the coast, the school district I'm superintendent of. Our major industry, our largest industry is shrimping. We are working right now with the Technical College System of Georgia to develop a pathway in commercial fishing to grow our own workforce for the largest industry that serves our community. I work with TCSG because we've tried for 6 months to work with the Department of Education and can get no one to return phone calls to help us. And so we're working with the Technical College System to develop one that's going to align to their system that will give students a technical college certificate when they complete the pathway. So the pathways are a great concept. They're great for economic development. They're great for attracting business and industry to your community when you can provide an educated and skilled workforce.
We'll start this line with Mr. Woods. In the past 6 years, have you ever supported a non-Republican candidate for superintendent of schools, and if so, why?
No, I've always supported Republican candidates. And I've been voting Republican since 1980 when I first voted for Ronald Reagan, and it remained true until that point. And definitely, as far as even when my opponent won the nomination in 2010, I actually came out and endorsed him, after that primary race.
So, I don't know who that question is directed to, but here's the deal. Education is not a partisan issue. Every child needs a quality education. Our kids don't come to us as Republicans and Democrats. They come to us as children. And I endorsed the best qualified person for the position. The state superintendent has no legislative authority whatsoever. They can't vote on a single piece of legislation. I've been a conservative my entire life. But education, if you can't tell, I'm very passionate about. And the results right now, with us having fallen from 7th in the nation in overall quality to 33rd, to me, says I endorse the right person that was the best qualified for the position. With education, to me, who was best qualified for the job?
I'm gonna split back and forth rather than first, last, and first, because of your constantly clearing, I'm hoping it'll help. How many non-citizen children are we paying for their education statewide?
Again, when you look at non-citizen, I guess, students that are in, by law, we are mandated to teach every child. We have no authority to turn away any child. There's no question that we go out and ask, individuals, are you a citizen or a non-citizen? So to say we have an accurate number throughout the state, I could give you a guess, but again, it would just be a guess. But by law, that is not something that we have an option to do. There's nothing we can do as a state or even as a district to turn any child away as far as education is concerned.
That is true. It's very difficult for us to know how many students are non-citizens. I can tell you, having been a high school principal in the North Georgia district, it was very frequent for me to have students that I would need to call their parents, and I have been told by a student, oh, when you call, ask for this name, because it's not the real name, and we are not allowed. We can't deny enrollment. We can't ask those questions. We have to take who comes. That's the law. So it is hard for us to know because in many cases we have children that their parents don't have the proper documentation or it's not legitimate documentation. But we don't know that and we can't ask those questions, so it's really hard.
As you know, teaching children is not solely the state's responsibility. What mechanisms would you aid in developing and installing to increase parent engagement? If you feel up to it, I was trying to give you a break between.
Parent engagement is a critical issue. Parents can be, I'll give you a prime example. I don't have my cell phone with me, but what I see right now that really concerns me is we have a generation of parents who are more engaged with that cell phone than they are with their children. And we see that in the public schools. So one thing that I commit to do is to work with our state PTA. They have a parent engagement piece. We have federal dollars, Title I dollars that go towards parent engagement. We have parent involvement coordinators in our schools. We have one for our district. They're very engaged. But work with them, work with the PTA, leverage resources so that we can have a campaign statewide that says to parents, we need a renaissance of parenting. We need you engaged. Just sitting down with them while they do their homework and you're on your phone doesn't mean you're engaged with them. So that's the commitment that I make, is to leverage our resources to collaborate with the PTA, organizations like them, so that we can be more powerful as a group, to address more people as a group, to get our parents back engaged with their children. We've got some great parents. But guys, I'm a superintendent, and I'm telling you, we can promote until the dogs come home activities, and I will have, I just had the entire district-wide parent engagement meeting. We had 12 parents show up for the whole district. So we've got to do that.
Well, again, for myself, definitely parent engagement is probably, the biggest challenge we face. But I think for us is, we need to reach out to these parents before they get to us. That's one of the reasons we're working with our physicians, our health department. Individuals that see parents on the front end, or dentists, to make sure that they understand the value of education, of how it can be a changer. Working with individuals with our Get Georgia Reading campaign. And again, this is involving not just us at the Department of Education, but us as a state and state agencies which we involve when we see parents. We need to be on the front end. We have to be proactive. And when you start waiting until parents come in and have their kids into our schools, it's almost too late even for children. We have to do something on the front end. But I think that also we have to realize that how do we communicate today? And we communicate vastly different than when you and I grew up. We didn't have technology today. We didn't have computers. The way we connected was, through writing letters or, dialing our own phone. Looking at options such as perhaps an app that, communicates the way in which parents engage in it. Today, even I think about email. Email really is becoming outdated. But if you sit there and have a message, a tweet, or not necessarily a tweet, but just something, a message that goes out to a parent with an app, then they'll look at that. They'll read that short message. So I think we have to look at it two fronts, be proactive, but also be engaging, as we are throughout the day.
What do you see as your role relative to public schools and homeschooling? So, 2 questions.
Well, I think for looking at school, of course, the role of state school superintendent is, again, to be a very proponent of public education and an individual that takes the lead. I think casting a vision, again, this is why it's an elected office. As I shared, the vision that I ran on 4 years ago is what I've maintained. I've not wavered from that. What I said I was going to do, then that's what I've worked on. It is somewhat, political as well, but you can get things done. You can actually work with the governor and make sure things happen. And again, we've been very, positive in that forefront. But also when we look at homeschool, again, that is an area in which, again, I was a homeschool director. And I think it's very important to, provide these individuals with the freedom of choice. They have made a choice that they want to homeschool their children. And I think we have to respect that. But one of the things I think that we are looking at and continue to do is that, make sure that our resources that we have at the Department of Education are available to each and every parent. Whether you homeschool, private school, within our schools, we are a public institution. Nothing should be behind a closed door. And so those are things that we're looking at, making sure that our resources are in the front end so that everyone can benefit from what we have. Because again, it's all funded by taxpayer money. And we want to make sure that we support those individuals. And again, I wholeheartedly support those that have made that choice with homeschooling.
I did not read the question accurately. It actually said private schools, not public schools. So I'd like to give you 1 more minute to address the private school relationship.
I think even now we go with the private school as well. Again, one thing I want to make sure with private school is that they keep their autonomy. I do not want them to be, intermingled with us. I think as you look at that those individuals have made that choice. To make sure that they keep their autonomy is something very, very passionate about. But also I would go back to the same thing as I looked at our resources. Our resources should be made available to those that are in private school, homeschool, because again, they are supported by, individuals as far as looking at tax money. And so we all benefit by having a strong educational, student body that's out there. I don't want to discriminate from everyone. I think that we can serve individuals effectively, by providing resources and support, as we have that ability to do so.
Okay. I'm going to read the question again. What do you see as your role relative to private schools, homeschooling, and since he addressed public schools, Deuteronomy State Public Schools?
Well, I think that for public schools, actually the state superintendent is the chief advocate for public education in the state. And as I said earlier, there is no legislative authority that comes with the state superintendent's office. And the biggest thing that you have is your influence. And you've got to be working with legislators when it comes to legislation that impacts children. So I think that's a critical role for the superintendent. You also need to be working with local superintendents and RESAs, the Regional Education Service Agencies across the state, to keep a pulse on what their challenges are, what their needs are, and what you can do to help them. I think when it comes to homeschool, I just have to say, look at what we did when I was state superintendent. I experienced as a local curriculum director just across the border here in Bartow, before I was state superintendent previously, we had a lot of homeschool parents. Well, what was happening across the state at the time is every county had its own method of dealing with homeschool parents. And when homeschool parents would move from one county to another, well, this isn't the way they did it. We standardized that from the state's perspective. And we took that burden off of local school districts And we made it central to the state, so it doesn't matter where you are in the state of Georgia, you go to the same place to register your child to homeschool, you send your attendance report to the same place, and then we've also made all of our resources available to Georgia, to homeschool students through the Georgia Virtual School. I was very passionate about making sure that homeschool students have the same quality resources so they have the opportunity for a quality education. I've been a parent. I was unable to help my child in mathematics after her 7th grade year because she was already in high school math. She finished calculus by the time she was 11th grade. I taught high school English. So I could not help my daughter in math much further than, the end of middle school. So not every parent has the ability to teach everything to the level that it needs to be taught. So as a state, I took that responsibility and said, we're going to make all these resources available to homeschool parents. As far as private schools are concerned, private schools are private for a reason. I think Mr. Woods addressed that. I don't want to enforce anything on private schools. I'll just leave it at that.
What resources are needed to assist students with learning problems and mental health issues?
It's a good question. I think, as I mentioned earlier, mental health is a significant issue for our young people. And we put a certified mental health counselor in each one of our schools where I'm currently superintendent. And it has had a huge impact on student behavior and student mental health. These counselors not only provide counseling for our students, but they also provide in-home family counseling for the entire family. And that has been very helpful in our community, and we've seen dramatic results. We have seen a decrease in the number of students who've expressed suicidal ideations because they're getting the help they need. We still have our guidance counselors, but guys, the state funds one guidance counselor for every 450 students. One guidance counselor cannot provide the social, emotional, academic, career, and mental health counseling that 450 students need every day. And so having those certified mental health counselors has been a huge plus for us. So I think one of the things that we need is more of that. We're doing it not because we're a local school district, but we have a grant that we are working through Gateway Behavioral Health and the Department of Behavioral Health from the state to actually provide that. And we're actually kind of a model for the whole state, and it's beginning to spread because we have been successful in that. So I would say that's probably the greatest thing that we need is more people to actually address the issues that we have in mental health and not just sweep them under the rug.
Again, throughout the state, as we look at, definitely, I think the overload of our counselor corps, again, as was mentioned, we do struggle there. We continue to work with the General Assembly to try to increase that availability of trained counselors. But also, I think, looking at what available resources there, just recently we were able to, I think receive $40 million of Medicaid money that was just sitting on the shelf. Sitting on the shelf, it does not cost us anything to increase, the number of school nurses, throughout the state. Again, a group that potentially could be used to help support that. Again, by, working to look at increasing career counselors. Again, hopefully by putting that number of individuals, that means that our traditional counseling corps can now spend more time with our children. Again, I go back to having the ability to build a relationship with children. That's something that our teachers need to be able to do. I think we've taken some steps there by reducing, the testing throughout. But also, it does not mean just limiting ourselves to the Department of Education. When you look at behavioral health and these other agencies, we continue to work with them to see how can we partner together to use existing state funds to increase that availability. And again, looking at that, and I think doing some things with the General Assembly this past year, we're on the right path to do that. This is, again, not something we necessarily need to do alone because we have a lot of resources and other agencies that can support what we want done. And so we will continue to do that, looking at options, and again, trying to make sure that, that every child, has a safe area. But I think when we talk about mental health, that also means looking at food and nutrition and things of that nature. So we're looking at other areas that perhaps could be a reason and perhaps cause some issues with that. And so we'll keep working hard, and again, we'll hopefully continue to make progress in that area.
Dual language immersion programs are becoming more and more popular throughout the state, including now outside of the metro Atlanta area. Do you support the continued growth of these programs? Why or why not?
Again, for myself, a dual immersion, that's something that I've been very instrumental with. We've actually have a seal that promotes foreign language and especially dual immersion throughout the state. It is something I think is very beneficial. I've been to schools in which I've seen kindergarten students who have taken, half a day learning French or Spanish. Perhaps they would be doing so in a science or social studies class or math, and then they would take a traditional English class. This is something that is greatly needed for our children, especially the earlier, the better. Because again, by the time you graduate, you can not only speak English fluently, but also another foreign language, which opens up opportunity for children as they go into the workforce. Again, we're looking at ways in which we can better support our kids as they become more career-oriented. And definitely with that education, especially in the foreign language area, we're seeing a lot of great growth in that. We have a great virtual program that is one way in which we can support that learning throughout the state in areas that have difficulty receiving or hiring a foreign language teacher. And that's probably the biggest challenge we face. It's not necessarily some of the funding, but trying to find properly trained individuals across the state. So yes, I'm definitely all in on this, and we continue to see that growth. And again, I think we will continue to see that in the years ahead as well.
So the research is very clear about foreign language. The best time to teach foreign language is when children are young, and it has everything to do with the physiology of the brain and how the brain grows and develops. And so the best time to do that is when children are young. One of my major initiatives when I was state superintendent previously was called 20 by 20. We wanted to have 20 dual immersion schools in this state by 2020. We're not at 2020 yet, and we actually had 20 schools before I left office. It is a very successful program. When you look at schools like Oak Mountain and Gainesville, you have students there in elementary school who are now fluent in English, Spanish, and Mandarin Chinese. And you know what happened with their test scores? Their test scores in every content area went up because it has so much to do with brain development. The other thing that I did as state superintendent previously that I would like to continue to do is work with our partners in other countries. We actually signed memorandums of understanding with Germany, Korea, and France to create exchange programs for not only students, but also teachers. Again, I'm a big proponent of dual immersion schools. There are very valid reasons as to why we should support them. Funding is an issue, and finding teachers is an issue. I can tell you right now, we're teaching foreign language in our school district through a virtual program because we can't find a teacher. So the teacher shortage is a real issue for us when it comes to dual immersion.
What is your education?
Just education background?
Your education. What is your education? Is what the
I have a bachelor's degree from Barry College in Rome. I attended public school in Cobb County and went to Barry on scholarship. I have a master's degree and a specialist degree in education leadership from West Georgia University and a doctorate degree in educational leadership from University of Georgia.
See, I grew up in a military family, so I traveled East Coast to West Coast, eventually graduated high school in South Georgia in Fitzgerald. I received my undergraduate degree in secondary education from Kennesaw State University. From there I worked 14 years in Irwin County as a high school social studies teacher, 8 years as an administrator, again giving me experience roughly in K through 12 with that. I have a master's in education leadership from Valdosta State. I've actually attended a vocational school when I graduated, from high school, and attended so it used to be Southern Tech, I guess, or Southern Poly, now part of Kennesaw State, for a time, seeking an engineering degree. And right now I've been, in office as state school superintendent for a little over 3 years, so that gives me roughly about 25 years of experience, but most of the experience comes at the school level.
Okay, we're ready for your 1 minute closing, and we'll start with Mr. Brooks.
Okay. Well, I think tonight, that as you look at the things, I wish to share that, we are on the move. Again, what I inherited, from the previous, administration. We have seen a lot of great growth in Georgia. We, have the highest graduation rate. We've seen the largest reduction in mandated, testing in our state's history. We've reduced the number of mandated, teacher observations, again, which I inherited as well. You've heard tonight of, where Georgia ranks. Again, I can pull up reports and say, well, Georgia, during my opponent's last year, ranked 38. But I think you look at what we've seen and what we've accomplished. Again, during the 3 years that I've been in office, I've made promises to you that we would focus on our children. That promise has not stopped. We are still looking at that, and we are moving forward. So I appreciate your vote. Again, please go to woodsforsuper.com, and thank you again for hosting us tonight.
Thank you all for being here and availing yourselves of the opportunity to come and hear the differences between the two candidates, and thank you to the Cherokee County Republican Women for hosting the event. My opponent will say just about anything to get your vote. He was quoted in the Cobb County paper saying, "I brought the Common Core to Georgia." Well, he knows good and well the former Superintendent Kathy Cox and son of Purdue brought the Common Core and raised it to the top of Georgia. I inherited this program to implement it. So, and to say that we're 38th in the last year of my office, my term in office, Ed Week didn't rank the states the last week of my term in office. You can go and look at Ed Week yourself. There are over 100 different indicators that they use. That may have been one indicator, but the overall grade that's assigned, they weren't assigned that year and they weren't ranked. So my policies led us to 7th in the nation. We're now 33rd. I think the choice is clear. Please go to my website, johnbarge.com, for more information.
Thank you, candidates. We're going to take a break, be back in your seats at 8 o'clock.